I'd like to start off where we left off on our last Keystone tutoring, and we were talking about different answers on the Keystone literature exam that you guys are going to be taking very soon. Um, One of the things that we are looking for, a lot of times they will bounce back and forth between various types of questions. So in this session, we are going to look at a sampling of some of the questions. And if you notice, I have the Keystone Sampler from 2019 pulled up so that we can analyze it. Just a backdrop of what we are looking at, you have a passage that you have to read. This particular passage from Module 1 that we're looking at is called Another Dog by Francis Hopkinson Smith. And it's simply a easy to read story about a dog. One of the things that you should always do is pay attention to some of the footnotes. So here I see some footnotes, 1, 2, and 3 on a concierge, reticence, and knickerbockers. And if those words aren't familiar to you, you should definitely look at them and be aware that they're there. On the second page, those were on the second page, and it doesn't look like there were any on the first page. So they footnoted 3 words on this particular passage. Now, the first question that we looked at was, what was the whole point of the opening of the passage? And this question, of course, was used to provide some an effect of the imagery and how it was used to describe the scene. And obviously, it created a sense of grandness and majesty to an otherwise simple scene. So, if we are looking at the way that the question's worded, describe the scene, if we look at answer A, it conveys apprehension that the narrative feels about approaching the large animal. The word scene is not used. It foreshadows events that unfold in the same location later in the passage. The word scene is not used. It implies that the scene would look and feel very different at another time of the year, or it adds a sense of grandness and majesty as otherwise simple scene. So, what is the effect of the imagery that's used to describe the scene? Well, it can only be C or D. Only C or D refers to the scene. So what I really do want to pay attention is when I'm reading questions that I look at the way that the question's asked and how I would try to attack the answers. So only C or D can be my answer. And if I'm really thinking about it, implying or does it add a sense of? What is the effect of the imagery? Well, it is definitely D because for several reasons I am adding a sense of grandness and majesty, and I am also looking at trying to compare how this effect of imagery describes the scene. So D's my answer. But then it's going to flip me right into another type of question, and I might be asked what is the synonym for the word inquisitive, which means to ask questions. I don't really even need to go too far that I know that it's curiosity. It's not pushy, it's not amiable, it's not observant, but curious. And when I'm curious, I generally am inquisitive and I start asking questions. Then it will jump me to other things about the use of various words. So in this one, it says, read the sentence from the passage. It says, the way we looked at you from under his eyebrows, not eagerly, not furtively, but with a self-possessed, competent air, quite like the captain scanning a horizon from the bridge, or watching the shifting crowds from one of the little stone circles anchored out in the rush of the boulevards, a look of authority backed by a sense of unlimited power. So I don't really need to go back to the passage to answer this type of question. It's asking which feeling is suggested by the use of the word competent. Well, if somebody's competent, we know that they are trust. They're trusted. So disdain doesn't sound like trust. Hostility sounds like meanness. Assurance, kindness. So again, I'm on C or D. These are the words that sound closest to trust. Competent, somebody I trust, and I am assured or I am kind. And that should lead me to assurance. Then there are these questions that are going to ask us to look at very a particular passage. And in this question, it says which sentence from the passage best supports the characterization of the Danish hound. And with all of this, and quite naturally, he was a dog. It was a dog of breeding, who, while he insisted on his own rights, respected those of others. So we are taking a look at first, he walked up sideways with his tail wagging straight out like a patent towel rack. So his tail was wagging. Does that describe that? Then, if you could have seen the anxious look fade away in the face of the strange dog, hmm, the strange dog seemed to change. Up went the spine of the stranger, and out went his tail like a bar of steel. The field braced, and the whole body taut. And finally, with tail wagging more violently than ever, he assured the concierge that he understood his position exactly. Well, the only ones that this could be is B or D. And if we're picking between it, what we're trying to look at is how did the dog seem to respect others? With the tail more violently than ever, he assured the concierge that he understood his position exactly. Respect those of others. So the answer here is D. That doesn't mean that any of these are going to be particularly easy, but what should happen is you should be able to narrow it down to two of the answers that are pretty close and one that is very good. Okay. And what they definitely want you to do is to identify the sentence best supporting the given characterization of a Danish hound in the text. And you, as a student, must be able to understand characterization and how it is conveyed in the lit. So option D is the correct answer, or the answer that is absolutely correct. And B is close. It says B states that the Danish hound was anxious when his owner went inside the inn. Therefore, B is incorrect. And option C suggests that the Danish hound wants to show strength but not respect for others. So again, the explanation is why B is close but not correct is that it's not the best answer. And so most students would pick between D and B. You could easily get it wrong because of the closeness of B. And then this is the last question that we're going to look at. These are very common on the literature Keystone. You read the sentence from the passage. Now, they're going to state it right here, so you don't need to go back to the passage. And it says, with his tail still wagging, showing his kindness and willingness to oblige, but with spine rigid and hair bristling, he explained clearly and succinctly to that strange dog how absolutely impossible it would be for him to permit the crossing of the archway. So what you're doing here is they're asking you to make an inference, and these can be very difficult questions too, where you have got to think beyond what you read in text in order to understand what's going on. So what inference about the St. Bernard is best supported by that sentence? So we have four things to look at. Is the St. Bernard confident and resolute with unfamiliar animals? Is the St. Bernard, is he being fiercely loyal to and protective of his master? Is the St. Bernard sociable but showing caution towards strangers, or is the St. Bernard being friendly but will firmly fulfill its duties? Now, I'm just going to let you sit on that just for a little bit so you can try to figure it out. So, with his tail still wagging, showing his kindness and willingness to oblige, but with spine rigid and his hair bristling, he explained clearly and succinctly to that strange dog how absolutely impossible it would be for him to permit his crossing and archway. And the correct answer is the last one. He's friendly, but will be firmly fulfill in his duties. So trying to make inference is probably one of the most difficult types of questions you will encounter. And it is because you have to think into what you're reading, and the answer is not directly there. So confident and resolute could be right. Fiercely loyal and protective of his master is the only one that doesn't quite work. St. Bernard is sociable but shows caution. That sounds pretty good. And the St. Bernard is friendly, very close to sociable, but will firmly fulfill his duties. So I would think that that would get us down to A, C, and D that we're trying to figure out. And this is why this question will probably be one of the most difficult ones you'll face. So the St. Bernard is confident, that sounds good, and resolute with unfamiliar animals. The St. Bernard is sociable and shows caution toward any of the strangers. Now, the reason that we could probably eliminate C is strangers we think of as not dogs, but people. So then this gets us to A and D. So it narrows me down a little bit, and then you might have to guess. Um, and you might pick A, and you might be lucky and get down to D. D is the correct answer. So let's take a look at why. Students are being asked to make an inference about a St. Bernard based on the information from the text, and the student must use details from the given sentence to try to make this inference. Remember, inference is what you think about it, not what was in the text, but it's because of that text that you get the notion or the idea. So, option D being the correct answer, it states that the St. Bernard was wagging his tail, showing his kindness and willingness to oblige, but that his spine was rigid and his hair was bristling, and that he was unable to permit the crossing of the archway. See, these phrases tend to show that the St. Bernard was friendly toward the Danish hound, but was determined to fulfill his duty as a sentry. And a sentry means like a guard. So there is no evidence in the given sentence that the St. Bernard is resolute with unfamiliar animals. Therefore, A is incorrect. Although the St. Bernard knows his job, there's no evidence that, given in the sentence, he's protective of his owner. And I would say that the reason that the owner isn't mentioned in it is because this isn't about people. Therefore, option B is also incorrect. And although the St. Bernard is sociable toward the Danish hound, the willingness to oblige does not demonstrate caution. Therefore, option C is incorrect. And students can select these incorrect options if you misinterpret the details from the text. So that's why, again, inference questions, although they're short, and although it looks like everything's there, can be one of the most difficult things you'll face. Without further ado, that is all we're going to handle on our Keystone Prep for today. Good luck to you. I'll continue to post these on my YouTube channel. So if you want to watch them later, you can. And we'll look at other questions next week as to what we see on the Keystone exam. And these are the extended response questions with Part A and Part B.